green room.
All right, I think we are online here. I think we're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, we'll have a few more people join us here momentarily, or momentito, as a friend of mine likes to say. So let's go ahead and do introductions real fast, and then as more people join, we'll do more introductions. I know Sash is going to join as soon as he gets off the call, and we have a couple more people who are going to join, but they're just on calls right now. So. Yeah, so anyways, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Danny, you want to go first? Danny, do you know to unmute yourself? Go ahead, Danny. All right, well, go ahead and Danny, go ahead and get your mic working, and we'll come back to you. Josh.
Hello, I am a black hat in the Witness Protection Program. My name is not Josh. You may call me Gary.
That's awesome. All right, William.
William Rock, another geek on the web.
Thanks. Wissam.
Sam Dandan out of Daytona, co-founder of GrowthGauge.
And where is your other co-founder these days? He never joins us anymore.
Well, he have meetings now.
Yeah,
It's
how is GrowthGauge going for you guys?
oh, pretty good.
Outstanding. Busy. That's what I like to hear. I'll be hanging out with your co-founder at eTail West in February. We're going to speak there together.
Yeah, he told me that.
We are looking forward to that. It'll be a fun time. Okay, so we didn't host this last week. I was busy putting on a 5K, trying to raise some money for a charity called the Pajama Program, where they take new pajamas and new books, and we had about maybe 250 people show up to do a 5K, which is kind of cool. First time, an inaugural 5K doing that here, called the Naughty or Nice 5K. And we had some great sponsors, and had a great amount of pajamas show up and some books. So that's why I wasn't here last week. So I know Archie showed up, but nobody came. So I apologize about that. And I know that we will get more people as we talk today, and we'll get this engine back on the track, so to speak. So I know Barry might not join us today because he's had a little bit with the sunset and stuff like that. So, and I'm a little sick anyways. So I know this last week we've had some interesting stuff about SEO even the last 2 weeks. I would love to talk about some SEO news in the beginning, and then we'll talk about some SEO issues that people are having. And I think it might be important to first talk about, I'd like to bring up the news article about Spain. Hey, look at that. Now we've got some more people joining us. Kevin and Pedro and then Sash. Okay, so we're going to talk about some SEO type news that I think affects us or could potentially affect us, and then we'll talk about SEO questions or issues in the latter half. Keep in mind I'm sick, so if you guys want to help out a lot more, that would be great. So I'd love to talk about the issue of Google removing Google News and how that would affect publishers in Spain. And maybe if you guys ever see something like that happening here in the U.S. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts and opinions on that. Anybody want to go first? Crickets.
Well, I think it's interesting because I was having this conversation with a few friends on Facebook, and Google continues to push the issue with how much content they display without sending people off the SERPs pages. And whereas I am on the side of content producers marginally with some of the things, like, for example, you look up how big is the moon. Well, the answer is right there. They've scraped that content from a website, and you don't have to go to the website to get the answer anymore. But in this case, obviously I'm on the side of Google, which is, look, news agencies who are crying about this the loudest also use the fair use clause. I mean, that's what this is based off of. It's based off of fair use. You have to be able to describe something in order to talk about that thing or link to it. And in the news case, the newspapers do it, but they don't want to, they don't want to allow Google to do it. That's my take on it.
My name is Gary, and I am in the Witness Protection Link program. I have no opinion about that particular topic. I have no secret information.
All right. Hey.
Right. See, from the way I'm seeing it, I mean, this is not dissimilar to what happened in Germany, except that the Spanish fools have actually made it law, which is going to make the whole thing a whole lot more interesting when it comes to the other end. Ultimately, the Germans left it, what, 50 months, 80 months, 2 years at the outside, and they were basically begging because they lost millions upon millions upon millions of visitors. And I really can't see it going any different way in Spain, Now it's all gone quiet.
Well, somebody, I think it was, Danny had said it in the comments that fair use is a slippery slope, and I think that is true. And there was a while back, there was a group of lawyers that was buying up old newspaper rights, and what they would do is they would basically send a bill to anybody that had referenced, even if they had used it under the spirit of the law, fair use, they would send them a bill and say, you used our content, we're not going to sue you if you just settle for $1,500, and people were basically paying it left and right because you're not going to go to war with lawyers for $1,500. But the reality of it is that fair use is meant to mean that if you're going to talk about something, you have to be able to show at least a portion of that thing. And so I think we're getting a little carried away on what fair use is and is not.
Oh, this is like pulling teeth today.
I was in Spain.
Huh?
I was actually in Spain.
I wish somebody could speak to the ethics of it. If we had somebody that was really good with ethics, maybe even.
No. I don't think we have anyone like that here. Not today.
No, my name is Gary. If there was this guy who's really good, and he's sexy too, named Josh Bashinsky, he could talk about ethics, but I'm under.
But he's not here. That's good.
Do you think it's ethical to use his profile picture on your?
I didn't see that coming.
Oh shit! Wait a minute.
Yes, that's it.
There was some tweet out a couple days ago from an ex-Googler that kind of mocked anybody who felt negative SEO was real. Specifically talking about negative SEO and looking at using it without using links. And it wasn't a tweet, maybe it was a Google Plus post. I'll share it here.
Gee, who was that? I don't remember. Actually, I think that's a slight kind of misinterpretation of the
a slight
of the spirit of that particular post. I remember being part of that conversation.
Barry, you want trouble again?
I'm just trying to cause trouble because you guys are having a hard time talking about stuff, so I figured since a lot of you guys are talking about this, throw it out there and you guys can argue with each other.
Right.
But is Matt too sick to put up a fight about the negative part?
No, I'll talk about it. So I do believe that it can happen. Okay, and I believe that it could happen in scale. But the thing is I am not a big believer in negative SEO, and I've talked to Josh about this a little bit. That I don't think that Joe Schmo is going to be doing negative SEO. I think that Joe Schmo, 99% of the time, is going to be, oh, let me see, if I buy 1 million links, I can get a lot more traffic to my website. And so Joe Schmo is going to do that, and then to make themselves not look as bad, I think that they're going to say, oh, I had negative SEO. Now, do I think it could happen? Yes. But I think it has to happen on a scale of where you're going to see it happen to a publicly traded company. If you really want to test negative SEO, and I've talked to Sash about this before, if we really want to test negative SEO, this is how I would do it. And if you guys want to feel free to correct me, feel free. Okay, so find a company that's publicly traded, short their stock, okay, a lot of it, then negative SEO the hell out of it. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do negative SEO to a company. Look for sites that auto-generate pages based on search queries. There's lots of sites that do that. Okay, then you could run all different types of stuff, and you could create millions and millions and hundreds of millions of pages. They're going to be low-quality, crap, thin content. Well, that's one way to do it. And if you really wanted to, you could buy links. You could send tons of links to them. But their site is going to tank. And when their site tanks, their traffic's going to tank. When the traffic tanks, the revenues tank. And when that happens, their stock goes down. And now, if you shorted their stock, you're going to make lots of money. So is it going to take money to make that happen? Yes. Is it going to take time? Yes. But I don't see many people actually doing that. I see many people actually buying links. And as Barry says, ranking doesn't always impact stock. That's correct. But if you look at Yelp, search San Francisco nail salon, you'll see Yelp owning the top 7 of 10 listings. So, yeah. And if you look at other companies, they might just be big enough. So you have to find a company that's not too big to fail, as the president once said, those companies are too big to fail. But you look at smaller companies that are big enough to fail, and you go after those. So, I don't know. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions.
See, I'm seeing, actually, funnily enough, I said this about 24 hours ago in another Hangout. I see attempt negative SEO on a daily basis. Okay, I do. I've yet to see anything that I would class as even remotely successful. Right, and there's an awful lot. There's a certain type of online businessman out there that's falling for the snake oil. Yeah, they're buying the snake oil. Oh yeah, we'll tank your competition. We'll buy 250 million links. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll do the other. That sort of shit doesn't work. Okay, there's a handful of things that will work, but as you just said, takes time, takes effort, takes money. Yeah, so. I know that there's a lot of chatter about NSEO out there right now, and there's no doubt a lot of half-assed attempts at SEO. Yeah, certainly all the Indian link builders that were made unemployed by Google in 2012, a good proportion of them have now become NSEOs, just doing the same old thing basically. Now, does that work all in and of itself? No, it doesn't. Yeah, there's a certain set of weather conditions that has to exist before an NSEO campaign can be even remotely successful, right? And even then, it has to be done properly and consistently over a period of time. You can't just go, okay, well, what the hell? I'll shoot 1 million links to this thing and then I'll leave it alone and it'll tank. I know it. It's just my take on it.
For link negative SEO, of course, there's other kinds of negative SEO. I don't want to mention publicly here because I'm under witness protection. But
no, let's go ahead and talk about them. I mean, if we're going to do a negative SEO hangout, let's do it.
Some of the ones I know about, they work right away. So I don't want to mention. I can put it in the chat if you want, but I don't want to mention it out loud to give anyone any ideas. But
You don't want to give people ideas. No, well, you
I
don't
understand
have to go to like Black Hat World or,
Yeah.
it's like I said, there's a lot of chatter about it, an awful lot of chatter.
well,
Well, what we could do.
Sorry, 1 second. The beautiful thing about Black Hat World is that it's 95% a bunch of script kiddies who have no idea what they're talking about anything. So it's a beautiful misinformation. It's a beautiful misinformation tool, right? All you have to do is put a rumor on there, and then they'll just go off on it.
Yeah, but I mean that's exactly. You can take that 95% and you can transpose it across, and probably add a couple of percent, and that's the amount of bullshit in SEO that's out there, you know.
Oh yeah.
So maybe what we could do that would be helpful is to dispel or talk about the ones that are basically ineffective and that are not worth attempting, and because the reverse then becomes true. Don't do them because you think it's going to add positive impact, and don't do them if you think that you're going to be tanking somebody else, like certain types like bounce rate tactics. I'm just going to go to my competitor and I'm going to click on his search results and immediately click back dozens and dozens of times because that's going to tank their SEO.
Well, the problem is that some of the link-based SEO, negative SEO, works in ways that they wouldn't have expected. It might not even hit them on the Penguin side. It could hit them on the Panda side of things if they knew how to do it properly. And although Google is ignoring about 95% of it, I will agree with Sash, the 5% of it still can work if the conditions are right. And that can still hurt a lot of people. I think that's going to be reduced even more with the extra checking that Google is doing as part of Penguin now. That's why Penguin is being released, rolled back, released, rolled back. I've got some information to suggest that Google's doing some advanced negative SEO checking there. They're even going so far as doing manual reviews as part of this Penguin process.
Rolled back?
Rolled back, yeah.
Who's rolling back?
They release Penguin, roll it back, release Penguin, roll it back. See my hand signals?
See mine? That fish is a week old and I ain't buying it. Where the hell are you anyway? Not like a racehorse or something in the background.
My name is Gary, and I am broadcasting from an undisclosed Vancouver airport location.
Right. Okay. I thought it. Yeah.
So one thing I would think about is, yeah, it's possible to do, but 99% of people out there are not going to be intelligent enough. I'm going to say it. Maybe it makes me sound mean and cruel, but I don't think they're intelligent enough to even attempt to do this. Okay, I think doing negative SEO is an advanced skill, and I think that Danny, maybe just restart, come back in, exit, and come back in. Maybe that'll restart your mic. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Matt. This was my point. This was my point. Yeah. I would agree with you. 99%. The problem is that it costs $5 or $20. Like, you can just spend $100 or a very small amount and throw a couple million Fiverr links at your competitor just to see if it sticks. It will probably only stick 2% of the time, but it only costs you $100 to do. If they've been spamming for years, and then they're teetering on the edge, and you point the last couple million highly optimized links at them, it might have an effect maybe 1% of the time. And it only costs $100 to do, so you try it, it's not brain surgery, it doesn't work, fine, you move on and you do something else. Of course, we would prefer that they would make their site better and do all those nifty white hat things, but if it only takes $100 to just give it a try, there's a lot of people who will be tempted to do that.
See, the thing is, and this is now the flip side of it, okay, before you engage in any crap like that, you better make sure that your own ass is squeaky clean. Otherwise it's going to come back and bite you.
Oh, everybody better make sure. I mean, you better protect yourself against all this different stuff.
Ultimately, it'll further a healthy ecosystem, right? That's what we're saying here, right?
I think I said a lot about this already yesterday in a previous Hangout. And from my experience, I have yet to see one site that can be victim of any kind of sabotage attempt. I rather call it sabotage than label SEO on anything that we want to catch eyeballs to. And any site that would fall on 3 points. First, that would have a substantial value proposition, and that works properly on marketing and all marketing channels. I'm not, instead of just showing up in search results, and never had a past stained with manipulation attempts. So any site that falls in these 3 categories, I have yet to see one that can be affected by any kind of sabotage attempt.
Pedro, could you actually do it? Could you perform negative SEO on a site?
Could I actually do it? I doubt it. No.
You're not that good.
I think no, I'm not. It's not about being good. It's about the kind of effort both in machine power and monetary power required to do something like this.
Machines are cheap. Machines,
yeah, but machine has to be intelligent. You know, the problem of automation is not automation itself; it's controlling the output. And like you have to control the output in a very intelligent way to be able to be successful. And this is something that is not cheap. So I say, like, most of the sites that I've seen that are weak, and our site has to have a weakness to be able to be prone to be hit by any kind of sabotage attempt. And
well, now that's a good point, Pedro, but let's go back to a statement that was said earlier, which I don't have any evidence for this. I mean, we can say it's never been done. That's kind of hard to prove. We can say that it can't be done, which is really difficult. No, you said you haven't seen it, but let's face it, there are people here who have seen it actually be done. But here's the other side of this is that it is one thing to say that. Well, let me back off of that. To tell me that the people who are going to do black hat are likely to have a squeaky clean site themselves, that's where I lose confidence 100%. Because if they're willing to go to try and do black hat, at least a percentage of those people are so desperate to try and win for the money of it, they've probably dabbled in the witchcrafts of SEO, and so I have a hard time believing that they're squeaky clean.
Well, I never said they were squeaky clean. I actually said if you're going to do it, you better make sure you're squeaky clean.
No, that wasn't at you, Sasha. No, I simply meant that I don't think that there's a large percentage of people who, maybe it was in the chat, but of people who would go after and do that. I don't believe a large percentage of them, certainly some, I don't think a large percentage of them would be squeaky clean.
So what are your guys' opinion about the Penguin rollout? How well do you think it worked? Do you think Matt Cutts would have done a better job rolling it out? Do you think it's working well? Do you want to give any insight as to what people should be doing now in this kind of storm?
Mikey likes it.
That was creepy.
Yes.
But you have to admit it was funny. I'm not seeing anything. I'm with any of the sites I'm looking at, and I have a few hundred websites to look at. I'm not seeing anybody that had a dramatic movement at all. So maybe others have.
Josh, I know you do a lot of penalty recovery. I do a lot of penalty recovery.
Right.
Surely you must have seen some effect.
What? Through the Penguin algorithm?
Yeah, or unless your clients
it's
have link problems.
As far as it goes, everything I've concentrated on lately has been manual link actions. So the manual link action comes first. What happens then with the Penguin? That's a question of ongoing effort.
Right.
But most of the time, once you get the link profile cleaned up to the point where the manual action is lifted, Penguin ceases, or at least for my stuff, Penguin ceases to be a problem, because by the time I've been through it, it's been treated with a flamethrower, basically.
Barry, did you get any feedback? I mean, it was only this morning, but did you get anything back from Google as to whether or not there's actually a data refresh that's going along with this, or is this just running against the old data?
I've asked several times, and they've not answered several times. They've responded, but they didn't answer those specific questions, and that's a very important question to answer. I hope to get answers, and I keep pressuring, but there's only so much I could do. Yeah. Okay, those who are listening now, I think you should type 1 in the chat if you think this Penguin release was a botch and was a major screw-up, or press 2 and into the chat if you think it was done right.
Into the comments, you mean? Into the Google Plus comments?
No, into the private chat and nobody else could see.
Oh, so 1 if it was good and 2 if it was a total botch?
Yeah.
I thought it was the other way
Didn't you
around.
just say one for botch and 2 for good?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
what
let's
you
make
say.
it A and B, because now we're all screwed up. So A was good. A was great. B, it was a total botch. B for botch. All right. The early votes are in. Oh, it's about equal at the moment, although William decided to use a different symbol. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. No, I know what it means.
And by that I mean...
Now, Danny says C. What does C mean, Danny? Oh, Kevin abstained. He struck his ballot. Danny, do you have a microphone? Can you tell us why you put C?
Hey,
This can't hear
It's
you,
not
Danny.
working.
So I think it was the rollout was a little bit messed up. One is, it just seems like at least they told me what they said is basically they're updating it as they go. Like, it's not even like they're like tweaking things in the live environment. That's what it seems. I don't know if they're just not communicating well. 2, they're doing it like now, the holiday season, which Matt Cutts would never have allowed, in my opinion.
I agree. I know I've been very critical of Mr. Cutts in the past, but quite frankly, I have to give him credit that I don't think he would ever have botched a release like this, not told us what was going on, and released it at this time of year. That's just my personal opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, I think they would have released the initial, because we were pressuring them to do something. But this constant fluctuation, unless they feel they've got it so wrong that they have to, no, I don't think they would have gone this deep into the season.
So it's our fault because we were complaining it took them over a year to release it?
Sure, yeah, it was.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, Barry. That's very ironic. You know, as it turns out, I do a lot of penalty recovery, as you guys know. Well, this guy Josh Bashinsky does. My name is Gary. I'm just a secret black hat. But this guy Josh Bashinsky, he's really sexy actually.
Okay.
He does a lot of penalty recovery, and you'd think a lot of his for black hat people, and you'd think that they'd be hurting, but actually 80% of them are fine, if not 90% of them. They've loved this rollback because they've all regained their rankings back from 2012. Penguin. They've regained, a lot of them regained their rankings, so they're loving it. They're loving it right now. A few of them are still down, which ironically shouldn't, in my opinion, are the ones that were the least spammy. Actually, they're the most legitimate company and the least spammy, and they're the ones still hit. Whereas some of my really, admittedly spammy customers, filthy spam, they're fine. So it's a little weird.
So we've been talking about this for like 20 minutes, so I think it might be a good idea if we were to move on. Something else. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just do that, okay? So I know other people want to jump on the conversation, and I know people want to keep going with it, but let's save it to next week when we can talk more about it then. So anyways, so let's talk about some international SEO, something I've been playing with, thinking about doing a little bit more of, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion of. I've done a little bit of international foreign language SEO in the past. I haven't really done much in the last 2-3 years, really. So I just want to get your guys' opinion on where the state of international SEO is, and
No, stopping you.
Go for it.
I just got this email from someone. I'm not going to name who it is. I heard from a fellow at a conference that claimed that Google said, or Google is, he said that Google is interpreting and intercepting every packet of data that's going over your computer line. We figured out how they're doing it. It's through safe browsing. Is there any truth in this theory as a source for ranking data?
Sash, you have your tinfoil hat?
I mean, why do people even bother? Seriously, this
Hang
person
on,
actually
what was that?
He's basically
Run that
saying
by
that
me again?
people are saying that Google's tracking every single data packet, within your internet connection, and using that
I got
for
that part.
purposes.
Oh, right.
And they allowed marijuana, right? So that's worse. You're gonna get worse and worse emails from now on.
And this is from somebody who's been in the SEO industry for probably like 10 years.
All right.
Really?
So you know pigeon ranking?
What?
You remember pigeon ranking?
Peter who?
Pigeon
rank.
Page rank. Oh.
Pigeon.
Pigeon,
rank.
as in the bird.
Anyway, you go on. I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
God.
All right. So international SEO. So I know a few of you here are doing international stuff. So I would love, and I know Pedro definitely is doing it, and I know Sash is definitely doing it. And I know Wassam is. So I would love to maybe get some insight from you guys to see where you're, and maybe if others are doing international, to see how it's going, to see what you guys are doing, things like that. If there's any things that you guys have discovered in the last few months or few weeks that you've been working on with that. Crickets. So I'm going to call on somebody. Pedro. Does Pedro want to talk? Pedro's mic is muted.
Sorry, there was a phone here ringing, and it's still ringing. So I'm trying to someone to answer it, and I could not hear your question.
Not a problem. I was asking. I know that you're doing international SEO, you, and I know Sash, and I know Wassam is, and for those of us who are in the Hangout, for those of us who are watching or potentially will watch on YouTube, is there different things, with different countries, does one tactic work well for, like, say, Brazil, where that same tactic won't work well for, for Spain, just different types of things like that?
I wouldn't call it a tactic. I would call it, it's more like you have to put on your site, make your site reflect how the country, for example, is divided, the habits of the country, how people search in that country. It's not really that's like a tactic per se. So, for example, I worked with an international company that has sites all over the world, and they have a site in Brazil, and I worked with the same company for Portugal. There are two Portuguese-speaking countries, but given the dimensions of Brazil, we opted for example, go for subdomains for states, because Brazil is so big and people search more locally. People are more willing to not to travel so much to go buy something to a different place rather than Portugal, that is a rather small country. and it wouldn't make sense to open subdomain for, because Portugal is not divided by states, for example. So I think it's rather an approach that you look at the country and you see the particularities of the country and how does the country approach habits on searching, and how do they, what do they do online, how do they shop, what are their interests, and you reflect that in your site rather than just being like some kind of tactic.
Cool.
This is it. I mean, it boils down to know thy customer. And it's like, for me, it's like I have a couple of British clients that are selling to Russians. They're selling to Chinese. They're selling to Americans. Just three utterly different target audiences. So it's like you can't turn around and talk about strategy if you're going as wide and as diverse as that. You're basically talking about three totally different sites for the same thing, because you cannot sell an American the same way you sell a Russian, the same way you sell a Chinese guy. So it's really first and foremost about knowing who the buyer is and catering to them, basically. You know, and if that requires, it's like another one of my clients, same product again, North America and Europe, but it's something everybody wants. It's only cheap, and it's quite an easy sell. It's just a question of, you know, getting the information out there, keeping everything up to date, getting your hreflang stuff right, so they don't get confronted with a North American phone number when they're connecting in France, for instance. You know.
Yeah, that's something I've really been looking at. I'm launching a website here in a couple weeks. It should launch, and it is a unique site for those who I've shared it with. And I'm trying to think of how I'm going to expand it into other countries, because it can be expanded into pretty much every country from, you know, what it can do. It's you know, thinking about those realms of hreflang, of making sure that your content is correct for the country. And, you know, I've been looking at stuff, you know, I've been studying the Middle East stuff a little bit more. I can't read Farsi or any of the different languages and stuff like that, dialects over there, that Wissam can. But I know that, you know, design layout has to be completely different. And Wissam, have you seen that? Like, if you'll design a website one way in the US and then you have to flip it around for the other way in the Middle East?
Yeah, I mean, not just, you know, Arabic, but also the Hebrew language is from right to left. So you have a lot of, you know, we have the actual, you know, I think WordPress, it has a certain plugin that you can make it right to left to right pretty easily with small tweaks. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
That's a good point. You know, user interface and design psychology changes entirely if you have a left to right reader or a right to left reader.
Absolutely. I mean,
I think too many people underestimate design psychology and user interface. It is crucially important, I think, for Panda in an indirect way, and just for conversions and for keeping the user happy. I think it's crucially important.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Pedro. Sorry.
No, if you think that I mean, if looking again, I think sometimes we need to look at from a more macro perspective to make some logic decisions and statements. If you look like at how information architecture and usability differs from country to country, culture to culture, and if you think that SEO is more than 90% usability and information architecture, you have your answer. Like, you have to understand how the site crumbles for each country.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things, a buddy of mine from Dragon Metrics spent a lot of time over in China, and if you don't understand the browsers that they actually end up having to use over there, I mean, it was primarily IE6, which makes us all shudder, but if you weren't compatible with IE6, you were screwed.
Completely.
I think
That's some.
I'm gonna share with you something, and this is basically applies a lot the psychology of the people living in that specific country. How can you, for example, design a website either from left to right, right to left, but the elements of it, you know. I think there's a good post. Let me search for it. And on Moz, one time they did it.
And Sash, I mean, what are you seeing as far as that goes with international and stuff like that? I know you're doing a lot of stuff over there in your little island of the world.
Which particular part are we talking about?
Well, as far as doing international SEO, I mean, what are you seeing? And yeah, I mean, technically, like if you're not in the U.S. and you're in some other place, then it's local SEO. And so I mean, I just would love to get your viewpoint on doing SEO in other countries other than the U.S. or doing it from outside of the U.S. towards the U.S.
See, the main part of what I do involves either stuff that's sold nationally in the US or stuff that's somewhere in Europe and is sold primarily to other places. So the stuff in the US doesn't really qualify. I mean, it's either national or global, but I don't really consider it international SEO per se. The other part, like I said, selling stuff from Britain to really highly culturally diverse, a culturally diverse audience. That's a different kettle of fish. Now, what I mean, do you want me to give you the 101 lesson? Is there something particularly you want to know, or
how about you give some points that you like the most, like your top three things?
The top three things that I like the most about international SEO.
Yeah. Yes.
I like the way you have to actually coordinate with what I'm doing, invariably the different sites with each other without falling into any traps. I consider the whole thing to be a giant game of chess. So the actual site control, overview, evolution, what have you, that I guess would be number one. I like that. I love the keyword research aspect of it because that just tends towards the idiotic. I mean, it's bad enough when you're keeping it to one language, but when you're having to work in multiple languages, not to mention those that use completely different alphabets, and you're having to start using third-party services, that's interesting. That really is interesting.
And the thing, what I see a lot, how the English is so developed from the infrastructure of the data and the information that's available, comparing to having that data available for other languages that you can actually. I mean, we had so many problems in what they call it, amplifying our work or having facts to support our work because there's not enough data, especially in the Arabic language, which basically is still green. And
I have to say, Arabic is not something I've ever worked with.
yeah.
So, yeah. But that particular, it translates pretty well into Chinese. Let me put you that.
Yeah, true.
Let me put it that way,
There's something I learned. I didn't know you could translate Arabic into Chinese quite easily. Is that true, Wissam?
I'm talking about the principles. I'm not.
Yeah. I don't know nothing about those languages, but the principles, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so Eric, I haven't seen you in a while. So I know you're working on a big platform, and we're speaking in like 2 months, and we need to get together here shortly and hammer those details out. What new things have you seen in the last few months that have piqued your eye? Things like that you're doing over there. What's some of your secret sauce that you wanted to spill?
I don't know. I mean, Edmunds is it's definitely new for me in the sense that not necessarily in the straight SEO sense, but it's definitely e-commerce, right? So Matt and I are going to be talking at eTail West in February, and that's largely around retail, e-commerce, and I know some of you guys are in it, but my background has largely been, publishing, like content creation, um, and you just drove for the page view. So when you have to actually drive for a lead or drive for a conversion, and automotive is actually quite interesting compared to even something when you consider like Amazon, in the sense that when you buy a car or even rent a car or lease a car, you're only going to be doing that every 3 to 8 years, right? So the user behavior is tremendously different, and then it varies regionally, right? So we're talking about international, but also like when you think about what we do, even though it's domestic in the U.S., each region behaves dramatically differently. So understanding each market, kind of like at that local level, but local nationally, it's a little bit different. So there are things that we need to like focus in on, like from a strategic standpoint of growth and SEO, in the sense that we have to pay attention to the largest markets. Yes, that's where like a lot of our traffic comes from and a lot of our overall sales comes from. But we have to support the entire business as a whole. So you can't just leave out those smaller markets, which can be quite lucrative. So I don't know. I'm definitely learning a lot here, but it's definitely interesting to consider. Our users who come in, they largely are only there for 30 to 90 days doing the research before they buy their car, right? So it's not like, if you think about your own car buying experience, you're not really doing anything hardcore until about 30 to 60 days in, and then you've bought a car, and then we don't see that user for another 5 years. So when you talk about like repeat visits and things that normally you drive toward in any other business, where like even if it's e-commerce, where you're trying to get that user to come back on a monthly basis or buy stuff from you on a regular basis or subscription, or even like a content perspective where you're measuring people coming back, how many times do they repeat in a month, over the course of their lifetime, where you're calculating lifetime value. It's way different in the automotive space. So there's some interesting things there.
Thanks. Thanks, Eric, for that feedback. As far as questions go, we got about 10 minutes left. Who's got some questions? I know Pedro's always got a bunch.
Me? Why? I was more interested in discussing all the news stuff and.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So
let's swing back around to it.
I think I'm more keen in trying to understand how the reason why it's taking so long for the newspaper industry to figure out that they have to change their business model.
I'm into that.
Well, there's a newspaper I know of right now that is hemorrhaging so much money, and they're owned by a family, and the family is coughing up $1 million a month to keep the newspaper alive. It will come to a point where that family runs out of money. Yeah, they got a lot. Trust me, they got a lot of money, but they can't go for a decade on that type of principle. It's probably going to be the next couple years.
There's one thing if there's one thing that really bothers me is when people don't fail to see the logical stuff coming. And for example, the newspaper industry, the music industry, the movies industry, it all started back when Napster and Kazaa and all of these things appeared, and they all had the example of the music industry, and nobody adapted, nobody did anything. The movie industry didn't do anything. The editorial, the newspaper industry didn't do anything, and they waited until now. And now they're all screaming, and running like they don't know where to run anymore.
Well, I think it's so being part of Spin Media, right? Like where music, entertainment, news, um, it's an extremely difficult business. Like when you think about it. So uh, largely the reason why, like the old crusty like newspapers and whatnot, like they're they do stuff like Spain, right? Or they do stuff like the whole Germany push over there. But even just in the United States, like there's not enough revenue to support those businesses. Like a lot of the editorial staff, especially when you think about news, they're like a news desk, like for a single publisher and newspaper, you've got like a news desk of like 6 to 8 people who are just writing up like small little news snippets, and these people are like getting paid very little. Most writers get paid very little. Even like the editorial staff, like the editors themselves, when you consider like what like a software engineer gets paid, they get paid very little, right? And then the revenue that's coming in, when you consider that a lot of it is branded ad sales, like it's not about conversions, it's all about page views and about impressions and whether or not I can get my how high can I get my CPM, right? And now that Google said that, or like the thing came out, like 56% of all display ads are not actually seen, right? That might actually impact the overall revenue that these publishers make. So I think for them in the industry to actually be successful, given the amount of ad revenue that comes in, there needs to just be a consolidation, right? It's so fragmented because there's so many people who can be in the space, right? You have anyone from large publications like New York Times to small little news bloggers, or even like Twitter kind of feeds, that it's not hard to produce news. So you have a lot of attention like fragmentation, and for any kind of real business to be sustained, either you have to have just like really small players, and these larger businesses need to become like just another small player, or these larger players need to just start consolidating the market to actually build up enough equity in the sense that they have power against the advertisers or the people who want to advertise them, so they can pay for a premium, or they can ask for that premium, right?
But this is what I don't understand. But this is what I don't understand. When it comes to buying products, or it comes to local brands, Google will prioritize big brands like Yelp or Facebook or eBay or Amazon. But when it comes to promoting news and information, Google will still be democratic, and it will possibly rank smaller news blogs, like Eric mentioned, above, say, the Washington Post. I was recently meeting with Steve Croft from 60 Minutes, talking about SEO and various things. And just so you know, I wanted to announce that 60 Minutes is very interested in Google and what they're doing and what's going on in the SEO space. And he was telling me that there's, for example, there's, from Steve Croft's perspective, so this is Steve Croft we're talking about here. He was telling me, from his perspective, the Washington Post has done a lot.
Who are we talking about?
Steve Croft, the guy who interviews President Obama. Oh, this Josh Bashinsky guy was talking with him. I'm Gary.
You just didn't mention the name often enough. I didn't know who you were talking about.
Oh yeah. Well, did I mention I was talking with 60 Minutes? Did I mention that enough? 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes.
Okay.
My point is that Google, of course, hasn't gotten good enough to determine yet when a big newspaper has done the research and the quality of the research that has been done. Of course, there's expert rank, there's backlinks, there's indirect ways of telling this, but his point was that the Washington Post had done way better research and had way better articles put out on this CIA torture thing, but instead Google was ranking kind of like a TMZ style fast food news, a bunch of little news stories from little bloggers on it instead. And he was asking me, well, why is that the case?
It's interesting because, like, I mean, you also get the opposite, right? Where like something like the Huffington Post, right, ranks #1 for all kinds of stuff, even though the originating source was some small little blogger. The argument, though, is interesting because it's hard to understand. I agree in the sense that I don't think Google completely understands the user's intent, and what they're surfacing is sometimes not necessarily accurate. But I can understand the argument of, hey, even though like the Washington Post is the originating source and they've done a ton of research, right, and they should be, cited and they should also receive traffic for it, if the user and the audience wants to have a discussion or understands that they want to know about the opinions of that smaller blogger, that's what should rank, right? In the sense of like Perez Hilton, like especially in like celebrity news and those kind of things, like breaking news is not the thing. People want to hear the opinions of that person who is, standing on their soapbox and yelling as loudly as they can, right? Or the Huffington Post, people go there to do commentary, to be a part of that community. So even though they're not the originating source, they are probably the best source for that user who's already read the story, but now wants to interact with the community, right? So it's really weird. Like that business is not like just like one and done. There's so many different aspects of just news that people want to partake in that, quite frankly, I do agree that Google hasn't figured out what those user intents are and surfaced the right stories or the right sources accordingly.
So that was weird. I think someone hacked my computer, some guy named Gary or something. I don't know what that was about. I'm just drinking a beer. But yeah, I did meet with 60 Minutes, Sash, just so in case you didn't hear. I was meeting with 60 Minutes.
Okay.
No, Josh, I hadn't heard, man. It's like I'm glad you told me that.
No, I think it's cool that 60 Minutes, is taking interest in SEO. I think that's kind of impressive. I look forward. Do you know when that piece is going to be published and come out?
No, we're still talking. They're still trying to decide what story they want to run, and they're still trying to wrap their head around how SEO works.
Yeah, so give them about 3-4 months.
Yeah, a little while.
Probably
Something
about 3-4
bigger actually
months.
is coming out before that. Something bigger is coming out before that. Another reason why I was in New York, and Barry knows about it. A few people here know about it. I don't want to announce it quite yet, but there's definitely a lot of big media coming out about Google's actions recently in SEO, and so we're going to have let's just say it's going to be less difficult to explain to our parents what the heck we do for a living. People are gonna know.
That's good. Okay. Well, cool. Well, I am dying. It feels like, and I'm gonna cut it just a couple minutes short today, guys. Just because I've got to run. I've got another call I've got to get on, unfortunately, and I'm hoping I'm not gonna be coughing in their ear. But get out, have a great weekend, and Eric Wu, don't drown in the floods of Southern California. So Eric knows what I'm talking about. We had like 4 inches of rain here in San Jose in the last 24 hours. So yeah, it was like.
Is that what that white stuff is called? Rain? It's so weird.
Yeah. People were freaking out. Like they closed schools. Like 101 even closed here as well. And the whole city went nuts. The whole city went nuts because we had 4. Yeah, it's like a snow day. Yeah, it's basically what that is. Yeah, people freaked out because it rained, and so therefore they closed schools. They told people to stay home from work. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was very, very comical. Many Googlers were not. They circled a memo around Google, from what I understand, told people to stay home because it was so dangerous because it was going to rain. Anyways, have a great one. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
Right. Catch you.